Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. There are few things as dangerous as not recognizing when you're in a fight, especially if it's one for your life. Yesterday's briefing happened to be about a cosplayer who thought that she was in a hobby, quote-unquote, where everybody was all sweetness and light, and she found out exactly what the reality was. Now, I'm not taking shots at this young woman. She's dead, and that's certainly not called for. What I'm talking about is, how could that kind of tragedy have been avoided? This is something that black parents in particular need to be on guard against. You see, that kind of naivete is what children are allowed to grow into, especially if they have parents who let them sit in front of the idiot box and they let the white media fill their black child's head with all sorts of lies and falsehoods. And when it comes to black parents, they know that a lot of this stuff that they're letting their kids watch, they shouldn't be letting them watch at all. The enemy happens to be rather sophisticated, so they're not going to be dumb enough to have people sitting there saying nigger, nigger. But the truth of the matter happens to be they are indoctrinating you whether you realize it or not. And the more you watch, the more you consume, the deeper the indoctrination. Of course, too many people like to make excuses for it. They like to say it's just a movie, just a TV show. Well, it's just entertainment. As I've told you a million times, the white media is not in the business of entertainment. They're in the business of mind control. Too many black people are as naive as they raise their children to be. When you have a child who's not even in grade school yet, but you've already decided to park them in front of the devil's playbox, what the white media does is they start pumping the images in, and the first image is a bunch of lies. Your children watch image after image that shows you a phony make-believe version of America that doesn't exist. The color-blind, deracinated panacea. That's what the white media stock and trade is. Go ahead and tell you this, oh, look at this image, look at this vision, isn't this rather pleasant? Pleasant, but not real. And even then, they always make it where the black folks are always supporting characters. Black people are never the main character. This is a form of indoctrination. It's meant to make you think that you're supposed to be just basically supporting whatever white person ABC in front of you does or says. That's what it's actually meant to do. It's a subtle form of mind control, as Dr. John Henrik Clarke said. The white media is out to control image. If they can control what you see, then they can control how you see yourself. And if they can control how you see yourself, then they can control what you do about yourself. This is how the white media creates dysfunction, a kind of racial codependency. You have entire shows with nothing but white people in them, and that's always portrayed as just a tabula rasa normal. It's not until they start showing black people that all of a sudden, well, we got to go ahead and make sure we put a descriptor on there. It's not just a show, it's a black show. Now, with your all-white shows, they basically get along with each other or pretend to, and the entire point of it is, we're just fine without those black folks. But black people, on the other hand, whenever we got one of our shows, well, there's always got to be some other folks in there, and that's meant to indoctrinate you that if you're black, well, you can't just be fine by yourself. You need to have other people, preferably from the dominant society, around. Otherwise, what you're doing, well, it's somehow invalid. And then you wonder why it is that whenever black folks are trying to get something going, you always got a few jackalopes in the room who for some dang reason are just determined that they're going to be having everybody else in the mix. And they always got some what for them is a nice sounding bit of altruistic rhetoric that they use to back it up. Where do you think they get that stuff from? That's that white media brainwashing. But the thing to remember is, when you got all these white geeks and white nerds, they don't do the same thing. That's the reason why I tell you got to understand that your enemy is sophisticated. The racially stratified society we live in adds an artificial, automatic context to everything, whether you're aware of it or not. You don't need to have to sit there and fill in all the blanks. That's the reason why both a white viewer and a black viewer can watch the exact same show, and both of them take completely different messages away from it. Unfortunately for that black viewer, white supremacy is the law of the land, and that being the case, it puts power into certain people's hands based on race. So when somebody watches a particular show and they've taken a different message away from it than you did, they also have the ability to act on whatever that message is, or at the very least, they are highly emboldened to do so. Black parents are going to have to start being a heck of a lot more circumspect about whether it is they let their children watch, and stop pretending helplessness. Stop always trying to offer up the excuse that, oh, well, what can I do about it? There's nothing I can do about it. These are black children we're talking about here. You're supposed to be in control of your own household. You don't just sit there and let any old thing go on. But that's a large part of the problem. Far too many black parents want to raise their children by remote control, literally. What black parents are supposed to be doing, at least this is what it was in my day, is to watch TV with their children. Now, keep in mind, there is an art and science to this kind of thing. You don't show up and say, kids, put it on such and such a channel. You don't do that. You're supposed to be observing. You're supposed to be learning. What is it that this child has gravitated towards? You need to see it for yourself. So when you sit down and watch TV with your kids, don't try to tell them what it is that you want to watch. You need to see what it is that they're watching. You'll get all the information you need if you sit down, be quiet, and just observe. Now, for a lot of you, you're probably going to be looking at these shows and going, a lot of janky stuff is going on that the kid may not be aware of. It's like all those Walt Disney cartoons from back in the day. Like Dumbo and such. As the great Paul Mooney said, you got the crows there and they're sitting here acting like a bunch of jive talking whatever. What, am I supposed to think there was a bunch of white pigeons or something? That's what they do. They interweave that stuff in there. The people who make the so-called entertainment that black people watch, especially black children, these people have nothing but complete contempt for black people. And it's no accident that these multi-billion-dollar corporations go ahead and elevate these individuals, cherry-pick them, cherry-pick their TV shows, their books, even their video games. The creator of Minecraft, that guy is racist as hell. And yet you have black parents who couldn't wait to take their kids to that Minecraft movie. And Hollywood couldn't wait to put top resources behind it to make it into a blockbuster film. See, the enemy knows exactly what they're doing. They know exactly who it is that they're cherry-picking and elevating. That's their MO. Here's a nice little experiment that you can try. When you sit down to actually watch what it is that your children are viewing, have you ever bothered to ask them questions about it? I mean, to really ask them just to see what it is that they say about it. Because I'm willing to bet if you actually watch these cartoons and these kids shows with a critical eye, with an aware eye, and then you ask your child about it, you're going to see that your child is sitting here thinking that it's completely and thoroughly harmless. Now, I'm not telling you that you need to play chief censor in the home, but what I am telling you is that your home is supposed to be an extension of the classroom, and you are the principal. And that being the case, you need to make sure that your children understand exactly what it is that they're watching. The people who are putting out all of this mind rot that these kids are watching, they're not going to indict their own slate of propaganda. They're not going to do that. Instead, they're going to defend it. And then what happens is, when a lot of these TV shows or a lot of these movies, when a lot of these games and such lead to activities outside of that media, we're talking about things like get-togethers, conventions and such, you'll have black people who are walking right into a den of vipers and not even knowing it. They're telling themselves that basically since they don't have any of this racial hostility toward their white counterparts, then there's no reason why the feeling shouldn't be mutual. Except that there's one thing that we should have learned from the mass murders like Dylan Roof and others, it's that white society has been teaching their children exactly the opposite of what black parents have been teaching theirs. That's the reason why you got all of these little young psychos running around just full of hate. They didn't learn that from television. Television encouraged it. Television taught them that it was normal, but the actual people who taught them to be racist were their parents. That's who it was. Their little enclaves that they live in, their social circles. That's who taught it to them. And that's the reason why the schools may have been quote-unquote integrated since the 1960s, and yet every successive generation from the suburbs and the rural parts of America, the non-black areas, they've become more and more aggressively anti-black. That's not some coincidence. And this is what you got a bunch of these black geeks and black nerds and black folks who are into all of that pop culture stuff. That's what it is that they're embracing. And they're trying to convince themselves that basically this is going to be a safe space. But how can you be safe in a society that targets you? The beneficiaries of white privilege simultaneously know that black people are the life's blood of whatever pop culture there is, and at the same time, they cannot stand having black people around. They love to hate us. As Neely Fuller said, white supremacy believes in taking both sides of the conversation. Of course, black children are going to gravitate towards this duplicitous propaganda. Of course, black children, hell, black people, are going to gravitate towards escapist entertainment. It's the reason that we're the main ones who watch comedies. We oversample when it comes to watching comedies. It's a form of self-medication. Being black hurts because we're living under white supremacy that attacks us constantly. As a result, we look for something to dull the pain, to anesthetize us. Get our minds off of the constant struggle that we have to endure. But the entertainment that you watch, it also serves to confuse you about why you're struggling in the first place. Worse, it's going to have you thinking that your oppressors are somehow on your side. And then these black children turn off the TV or put down the telephone or close the book they were reading or turn off the video game console and go back to the real world. But since their parents were too busy to mentally prepare them for the harsh anti-black reality they have to face, they'll be trying to make friends with people who hate them. As Dr. Claude Anderson put it, inappropriate behavior. See, when you have white writers and white producers and white programmers who are creating the so-called entertainment that you watch or consume, these people are not just doing it in a vacuum. They understand that ultimately what they're creating is meant to be a deification of themselves. And the white geeks and audiences that they make this stuff for, they understand that as well. That's the reason why whenever you show up, you're thinking to yourself, "Hi, everybody, I'm here to be your buddy." And they're looking and going, "What are you doing here?" That's why they react that way. You got these black geeks who are walking into these dens of vipers thinking to themselves that they found a safe place for their hobby to enjoy their little pastime. Meanwhile, their white counterparts looking and going, "We thought we had a safe place from being around you." That's what these little gatherings and meetings and conventions represent to the white geeks. They represent what they think is their bubble, where what's going to happen is there's going to be a nonstop celebration of whiteness, and then you got some black folks who walk in the room and remind them of the real world, and that makes them furious. Conditioning black children to seek out escapism, allowing them to grow into that kind of behavior, that makes it where they're not going to be ready or equipped to deal with the real world. And if that indoctrination is allowed to go on long enough, they're going to stop even being willing to accept the real world. They're just going to want to stay in these white media-generated fantasies, and they will die there. Oh, you got black folks, of course, ready to make excuses. They're just kids. Let them enjoy whatever they enjoy. If they live in a society that valued black life and actually fostered black empowerment, then that would be okay. These cartoons, TV shows, video games, and books, they would actually serve to edify, glorify, and honor them. Or even if they didn't, it wouldn't matter because they would be the ones who have power in the society, so any sort of TV show that they don't like, it's nothing more than at most unpleasant fiction. Only problem is we don't live in that carefully curated world. We live in this one, where black people are attacked constantly, and even the entertainment is meant to justify those attacks. It warps your mind and breaks down and degrades your ability to resist white supremacy. And this confusion and delusion also spills over into other areas of human activity, like elections, for example. The same way you see black geeks who simply refuse to accept that these racist white geeks are racist, you also have black people who are into politics, and no matter how racist the leaders of either party are, no matter how racist these left or right-wing mouthpieces are, there's black people who insist on telling us, oh, they're not really racist. And they insist on trying to be buddies with these very people as they seek to climb some sort of ladder. And then you wonder why it is that these people are always sitting here lapsing into, well, the real issue is class struggle, you see. It's about class, you see. Class, you see. Now, if our biggest problem, if the real issue in America is a class-based one, then Diddy and R. Kelly wouldn't be cooling their heels in a cell right now. They'd be busy kicking it somewhere with the likes of Louis C.K. and others, because their money would have protected them. Except it didn't, because it never does. Meanwhile, as I've documented for you endlessly on my crime reports, you got white folks who ain't even got any money, and yet the law does not touch them. And that's because we live in a society with a color-coded injustice system, and those people happen to have the complexion for the protection. So you got these black folks who think of themselves as being political insiders, or think of themselves as being some sort of academics, and as a result, they put all of their faith into, oh, look at these good folks that I'm hanging around with. They sound just like geeks from one of these comic book conventions. We know why the enemy hates us. We have the pulse, the life's blood. Our problem is that we keep injecting it into the veins of the unworthy. That has to stop, especially where black children are concerned. If you're looking for escapism, there's plenty of content that's been created by black content creators, individuals who actually honor black children and dignify them, and they don't attack or otherwise take slick shots at their black viewers, and at the same time, they also make sure that they're not letting in all of these little white supremacists. They don't create safe spaces for anti-black racists in these particular groups. That's what happens if you go with that. But Part of the problem happens to be, as I alluded to earlier, black folks have been conditioned to think that if it's just black people in the room, well, there's something wrong with that. It's not good enough somehow. Meanwhile, everybody else is doing what they can to make sure that whatever circles and gatherings they have is for themselves alone. Consider this. Did you know that South Korea limits how much American read white entertainment they allow into their country? They limit that stuff. You want to know why? It's because they noticed years ago how when their people watch the stuff that comes out of the United States, these South Koreans began to start feeling bad about themselves. I've told you in the past how South Korea is basically the eye surgery capital of the world. By eye surgery, I'm talking about eyelid surgery. That's what they do when they go ahead and get their eyes fixed. Go ahead and get rid of that slant-eyed thing, and the eyes can be more rounded, like an American read white person. In Asia, and in general in Japan, China, and Korea in specific, they believe that Asians should be running the show. But these TV shows that come in from the United States, they subtly influence people to think otherwise. So that's why the South Koreans decided they were going to limit that mess. So no, it is not just entertainment. It's poison in a candy coating. And worst of all, it's not even sweet candy. It's bitter candy. So no, it is not just entertainment. And these other people over here, they're not just fans or just content creators. They are the very forces of anti-black racism that you're supposed to be on guard against. I suppose there's just a lesson that black people have to keep learning over and over again. The things that we have actually created that have been the most beneficial to us, that have been the most effective and had the most impact, were the things that we created when we didn't have anybody else around. We had our own thing that we were doing, something that we had created, something we were nurturing and helping to grow. And the problems came as soon as the folks outside the community heard about it and knew about it. Then all of a sudden they're trying to bogart it and bums rush it. That's when the problems started. So family, be on your guard, especially where black children are concerned. Guard your eyes because that's how you guard your mind. Don't let anybody have you thinking to yourself that you're going to die without whatever form of entertainment it is that they've created some sort of fan cult following around. There is nothing so special or so important that you have to endure any sort of abuse from other people. What's required here is for black people to put our singular genius to work for our benefit. The same way we've always dominated in sports and music, we can also dominate when it comes to escapist fare. I'm not saying that there's necessarily anything wrong with it as long as we're the ones in control of it and we're the ones who are actually deriving the income from it. Unfortunately, right now, none of those things is happening, and it's time for that to change. Whatever it is that black children in particular are watching, it needs to be something that validates them. It needs to be something that honors them. If it's not, then you're the one who needs to be stepping in on that. As black people, we have the ability, we definitely got the talent to create exactly those kind of things. In fact, when black people put our minds to it, we punch way above our weight. We got the raw talent, it's just a matter of putting it to use for our benefit. I've told you in the past about how for a while you had on 3 separate networks black shows who happened to be tops of the ratings. I'm not talking about comedies. I'm talking about, and I do not give any sort of endorsement here, but if you look at Shonda Rhimes, she had the top-rated show on her network. When you look at even Lee Daniels, I just vomited in my mouth a little bit, he had the #1 show on his network with Empire. And of course, 50 Cent, one of the most confused individuals in media, he had the top show on his particular network too. Whether you like them or not, and I'm not endorsing the individuals, I'm pointing out that black people, if they put their minds to it, we are fully capable of creating whatever kind of escapist fare that black children may be looking for. And it's going to be things that are not running them into the ground. When you actually happen to control things and you create things, you can also curate who's allowed into it. Black people are going to have to start having standards for the things that we watch. And we're also going to have to start insisting that whatever it is that we're a part of, we must also make it. That's something else that Dr. John Henrik Clarke taught. He said whatever it is that you happen to be a part of, it's supposed to be something that you actually are doing yourself. If you like cars, you're supposed to be owning a car factory or at the very least a dealership. You happen to like clothes, happen to like shoes, you should be making them. And if you happen to like escapist fare, if you happen to like these TV shows and cartoons and movies and such, you're supposed to be making them. We don't need anyone's permission to make these things, and we certainly don't need anyone's approval to embrace them either. Our problem happens to be that we want validation from other people. That's part of our own codependency that needs to be dropped. When Black people actually embrace what it is that we create, it takes on a life of its own, far more vibrant than anything that somebody else could possibly pretend to offer to us. That's the power that we've got, if we choose to use it. If we begin to treat Black intellectual property as if it has value, then it's going to. If we make it a point that these are the things that we rally around, that's what gives life and empowerment to it. You want to know how you make something a big deal? By acting like it's a big deal. And this has real value, because the alternative is what we've been doing so far, which is basically to have Black children wading into these cesspools full of anti-Black racists and hoping that the Black child enjoys themselves in spite of all of the slings, daggers, arrows, and knives that are going to be hurled at them. People who hate us should never believe that they're going to be able to get any money from us, much less our time. And if you got individuals out there who think to themselves they're going to create safe zones for anti-Black hate, we definitely should have more sense and more pride than to have anything to do with trash like that. If there's going to be Black people, especially Black children, who are consuming any sort of entertainment, then we owe it to ourselves to make sure that whatever it is something that is worth our while. And if it doesn't exist, then we go ahead and put our own genius to work so that we make it exist. At least then, there'll finally be something worth watching. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Ronald Waits, Loretta Miller, Terrence Gaines, Asfeo Dingaswayo, and Paul Fiquir. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.